Hey everybody, it's Justin from the camera shop. It is Wednesday, 7:29, and we're here to do the Facebook photo challenge, Best of West Michigan review. So we're sorry about yesterday. Things kind of happen around here spontaneously. So sometimes you have to adapt to the situation that's happening here in the store. So we were unable to get to our broadcast yesterday. So I apologize for any of you who are ready to tune in, eagerly looking to see everyone else's photos and recap the Best of West Michigan photos. But we've got a lot of great submissions. So without further ado, we'll get started with that. Just as we normally do, I always kind of recap what's happening with kind of what the kind of the purpose of the assignment was to do. And of course, the Best of West Michigan is to inspire you to capture the best of our local area. So whether that is here in Muskegon, Grand Haven, anywhere along the lakeshore, you have the opportunity to do that all the way up, here from Traverse City or as far south as Michigan City. So I'll just quickly kind of go over some of the photo tips just to kind of recap for you guys who may have not tuned in last time. If you're just tuning in for the first time, inspiration is one of the first things. Always start with your research. That's something that I encourage most people to do, is go to Google and Google search your results. You could do Best of West Michigan. Every time I did Best of West Michigan, I ended up getting like wedding photographers or portrait photographers of the area. So I made it a point to really look at the actual Michigan photos themselves, as far as just kind of Google searching Michigan photography, and that really gave me the better results that I was looking for, because most of the stuff is going to be of sunsets and landscapes, things of that nature. So it's just a better search result is just searching for Michigan photographs, Michigan landscapes, things that you would kind of dial in on. If you're going to shoot farms in West Michigan, you would do Michigan farmland and look up, or Michigan farm photography, or farm photography in general. So just things along the lines of the things that you're going to be doing your research. We got some people tuning in already. We've got Jason Helmer saying hello. Ran into Jason last night in Montague at the Sunflower Field. Hello, Jason. Charles DeWitt, Mr. Chuck. Chuck is a good contributor and has been pretty adamant about sending us stuff. In fact, I got your email with your wives images, and I actually thought it was kind of cute that it had your name, of course, but it was Charles' wife on there, and I thought that was great, and I think it's Carol. So thank you for having her submit and encouraging her to submit. Charles, appreciate it. And Tim Hanko is tuning in as well via YouTube. So thank you, Tim, for tuning in. It's kind of our first YouTube live person, so thanks for joining us. Feel free to say hi, guys, or any questions or anything along the way. By all means, you can drop them here in the comments, and I'll try to get to you jumping back and forth here. So beyond inspiration, which a lot of this is going to kind of be the same old drum roll that I have from week to week. So again, this is just information for those people who may not have been able to tune in last time. So what I talked about this time around was kind of more or less focusing on telling a story. So that's the biggest thing with photography, is that as you guys know, the old adage or saying goes, a picture says 1,000 words. So what we really want to try to do when we're creating a photograph is we want to be able to tell a story. We want our viewers to be able to look at images that we're creating, and we want to be able to have them kind of be able to read the image visually and gather a story from the information that they see. And that's something that can be kind of difficult, but that's part of the challenge, is being able to be able to draw those connections and correlations, to your viewer, with what you're seeing. So it's more than just tripping a shutter. I've been encouraging a lot of people as of late to really be focused on going out, and before you even go and create an image, really going out and before you go out, kind of getting an idea of, as an example, the sunflower field out in Montague. A lot of photographers have been creating a lot of great images from there. It's a really popular place to be right now. But before you go, you can already kind of see what people have created from that, so you kind of know what kind of information, visually what people have been creating. But the idea is to really think of, okay, I know it's there. What do I want it to look like before I even get there? How do I want to frame up a shot? Uh, so kind of going out there with that prevision, with the intent of creating something that you've already previsioned in your mind, and you're going out there and you're simply just trying to line things up with your creative vision and snapping the shutter, instead of going out there and just going click, 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 and taking 100 photos and saying, well, I got one good one out of 100. It's really more or less, it's quality over quantity. So you're really focusing on creating that one good image versus just snapping a bunch of good images. And this, don't feel like you have to feel restricted within that thought or idea. Rules. There's really no rules to photography or creativity. It's really just what best works for you. So if it works for you, go out there and create 100 images or 1,000 images. But I would encourage you to kind of slow things down and kind of pre-plan what you're going to shoot and what you're going to capture, and going out there and then simply bringing what you imagined into fruition, right? The other thing that I talked about in the Best of Michigan is kind of building, trying to capture your heart and soul in it. Todd and Brad Reed, when I did their interview on Facebook Live, they really talked about the emotional part and the emotional connection of photography. And they were, there can be images that are more visually compelling as far as the composition's right, the line, the composition, which is kind of like the lines, the color, how things fall in the photo, can be very, photographically speaking, very strong. But what they're trying to do is build that connection between the emotional and the compositional, and having strong connection between the two. So that will help create better stories when you create your images visually. So always bear that in mind when you go out and create. Lighting is another quintessential thing. Again, photography, and I'll say this over and over again, is painting or drawing with light. So you want to make sure that you are capturing everything in its best light. A lot of the times you will find that your best light is in the early morning or late afternoon being late evening, just before sunset. And those two periods of time are called the magic hour. Now, I tend to like the magic hour in the evening because there's a lot of dust particulates in the atmosphere, because the world is starting to move, the world has been moving around for nearly 12 hours. And that kicks up a lot of dust and particulates and other things of that nature. And when light passes through those particulates, it really gives a lot of that, those oranges and reds and some of those fun colors that we really appreciate, and really give it the golden hour kind of name. Whereas in the morning, sunrises aren't as brilliant as the sunsets. They're few and far in between, and that's because the particulates have settled overnight, because activity is really low because most people are sleeping. So remember to kind of capture light at its best times. Be mindful of where the light is. I'll go back to the sunflower field, where that faces, at least the sunflowers right now are facing east or west. At this time of day, they'll be probably facing west because they're getting ready for east, getting ready for the sun to rise, which means that the sun will set behind it. And a lot of people have been doing that. They're getting the sun setting behind it, getting these nice sun rays and flares, and it's creating some beautiful imagery. But I'd also encourage people that, hey, if the sun is going to rise in the east and all those heads are facing to the east, get out there in the morning and capture the morning light, or just before the morning light, and that can create some strong imagery. If you go out there now, you'll still be able to get some good shots, but the light is coming from up above at different angles, so you might get different shadows on your sunflowers that might not be flattering to your imagery or help complement your imagery. So be mindful of the time of day and the quality of the light that you have. We went out there last night. It just happened to be kind of cloudy, overcast. It turned into stormy weather. So it can create a lot of great atmosphere for our shots. Jason Helmer has a really great one of a shelf cloud coming in that's been really popular online. And that's something where don't be afraid to shoot in different situations. Again, these are all rules and techniques that you can use to help create stronger imagery. That's not to say that you can't capture a very successful photograph even now at 5, 6 o'clock or high noon. Just be mindful of the light and the quality of the light. Those will always help create stronger images. Um, Jason says, I wish I could download images, but it won't let me. I wanted to share what I did with the coming in storms. That's okay, Jason. I could have found it real quick and kind of showed everyone. But I think everyone knows what we're talking about because there was people who were showing up at the sunflower field who were like, did you see that photo? Did you see that photo? So I think it's safe to say a lot of people have seen it. Karen is saying, hi, Justin. Can we still view your interview with Todd and Brad Reed? That's a great question. That should be on our Facebook page. I believe we shared it to YouTube as well. If not, it is in our Facebook page. So if you're tuning in right now, I'm getting a confirmation from Jonathan right now with a thumbs up saying it is. So just go to our video wall there, and there's a slew of videos that we have. There's a lot of Facebook Lives for the photo challenge, but you'll see the one that's with Todd and Brad Reed. It's a great interview. They were gracious enough to give us an hour and a half of time when we were only really slated for an hour. So there's a lot of good stuff there, and I would encourage anyone to watch it to just kind of get a feel for how they kind of view the world and how they view their work. And we hope and look forward to having other great conversations live with them in the future. Yeah, and she's saying, you said Tom and Brad Reed, don't worry about it. She says, thanks, love their work. And yeah, we're big fans too. They're really great customers of the shop. They do a lot of great workshops. So if you guys want to learn more, I know they're looking to kind of fill some of their workshops. So this is a shameless plug for Todd and Brad Reed and a lot of their photo workshops. They have even said, even during our interview, that even if you're an accomplished photographer, they have accomplished photographers come out because it's about learning new techniques. And that's really why we're doing the Facebook photo challenges, because especially with the reviews like we're doing tonight, what's really important about this, and I was talking to somebody that I ran into at the sunflower field yesterday, is that it really helps to build a better mind in capturing images when you get to see other people's work and you can talk critically about your work. And I would like to think that I'm being pretty fair with everyone, where I'm not being too harsh with any criticism, that this is all constructive criticism and it's helped a lot of people grow. And when you start to look at images long enough and you're able to talk about them long enough, one of the fun things that I enjoy about doing this is really looking at your guys' images and being able to kind of dissect how you've photographed it. How far away were you? What time of year was it? What time of day? Even your camera settings. Even though a lot of you guys are sending the camera settings over, I'm not saving those to your images, and I'm not looking beforehand and writing these things down. I'm simply looking at them in real time and trying to discern how you photograph them. And the more you do this, the better you will become at kind of building this muscle memory in your mind on how people are shooting, and in turn that creates the muscle memory, like, okay, I saw this person do a similar shot, they used this f-stop, they had this kind of time of day, and you're able to kind of duplicate a similar look based upon what you're seeing and based upon how you've been able to critique work. So without further ado, I'll carry on. I thank you guys for letting me ramble a little bit. I just get really passionate about it, and I want to make sure that you guys feel that too, and that kind of fills up your creative gas tank here. So angles and perspective, that's very key in being able to tell your story, because you want to be able to, angles and perspective, I say this every week, is that we're all looking at kind of this standing height. And when you look at when you're viewing the world from a standing height, it gets kind of boring. Anyone is, I'm all 5'8", and I look at the world from that standing position every single day. And if I can have a photograph presented to me from a different point of view, it creates new interest. And that's why a lot of people shoot babies or children from a kneeling or lying down position, because you're on their level. You're getting down to kids' levels. Because when you're the adult looking down, there's that air of dominance over them. And so if you're shooting upwards and down, you kind of get like this dominating feature over them. Whereas if you're shooting up, there's kind of that illicit feeling of dominance, because when you're looking up and small and looking at something big like a person, that's a very dominating thing. When you're looking down, you're kind of you're dominating over them at that point. I think you guys are getting what I'm kind of laying down right there. But changing your perspective can really change the feel of your photographs. And if you can present us something or a new way of seeing something that has been photographed, again, going back to the sunflower field, that's going to be photographed in a similar way over and over and over again. So the idea is to look at what everyone's creating going out there and see, and just trying to think ahead of time, how can I do this different? How can I set myself apart from everyone else? Jason is a good example again of being able to, we're a lot, it's going to be popular to see sun in a sunflower field, right? And Jason was able to catch it with that shelf cloud. A lot of people last night were able to catch it with those crazy storm clouds. So it's important to shoot in different types of weather environments, not just sunny skies, because you never know what you're going to get and what kind of mood that's going to set for everything. Beautiful sunflowers, very looming storm clouds overhead, right? So it changes everything. So be cognizant of your perspective and your angles of approach. Line shape, color, and detail. Very important things because color draws our attention. Lines lead us to where what we're looking at in our photos, and you can be very, very to the point of what you want your viewer to look at when you're using leading lines. The really good thing about the sunflower seed field, again, I'm using this as an example because I was out there last night and it's very fresh in my mind, is that when you have those leading lines, you can use the actual, that field is planted. So there's actually rows of sunflowers. And if you line it up just right, there's a house way in the background facing to the west. That the house is facing east, but if you're looking to the west, you'll see the front of the house. And those rows actually kind of lead you to the house. And depending on where you get, you could kind of use those lines to kind of lead you to the back of the house. Even though we're just looking at rows of sunflowers, those are all implied lines going out of the way to the back, and it'll lead us through the image from the forward to the backward. And curved lines can do that, diagonal lines can do that. Different lines have different feelings. Horizontal lines are calming. Vertical lines kind of elicit this feeling of movement or motion. So that's, even though there might not be motion, so that's just something to think of with that. Color really draws our eyes. When you're looking at something like red against green, those are complementary colors, and that's what they kind of create some contrast, just visual contrast, because we have a red color with a green, and because they're complementary colors, which means that in color theory, they're across from each other in the color wheel, typically complementary colors will create kind of this visual contrast, and you can draw someone's attention based upon those two colors being against each other. Analogous colors are colors that are next to each other in the color wheel. So a sunset, for example, has red, orange, yellow. Those are all complementary colors. And when you have complementary colors together, they elicit different feelings psychologically over that of complementary colors. Don't be afraid to work with abstraction. Abstraction is something where you're trying to show your viewer something that they've seen before, but in such a way that they can't tell what it is at first, right? That's what abstraction is all about. You can go back and look at abstract artists, painters, and kind of look at their work to gain inspiration. Abstract photography really boils down to the simplest form of objects. So kind of, I think of a fire hydrant and really kind of zooming in on the curved lines and just kind of the crunchy detail of the object, and trying to present it in such a way like it's a fire hydrant, but you've never seen it that way before. So don't be afraid of doing that. My favorite example with abstraction for West Michigan would be going back to Todd and Brad Reed and shooting the reflection of water, just getting the really nice colors in the rippling off the water, and zooming in really tight to kind of get these really nice, just the way that the water kind of creates. Doesn't create succinct shapes, right? It's kind of like this moving, flowing, organic thing. Like, yeah, water's flowing, Justin, we get it. But it's just kind of like free and loose brush strokes, right? And if you kind of do a long exposure with that, and you can kind of get the blur in there with solid ripples, you can kind of create some fun things. So it's really important to be creative with your photography when you're creating all this work. The final thing is color. We kind of talked about that with the analogous colors and stuff like that, so we won't cover that. But basically, just go out there, create good work, and just have fun doing it. So I'm going to kill that right now. Sandy Bruce is saying hi from Chicago. Sandy, well, I don't know why you decided to go to Chicago. If you go shoot the Bean right now, there's probably nobody out by it. So, hey, hats off to you. I just hope you don't have to stay there for 14 days, right? Karen is saying hiya. Hiya, Karen. How you doing? So we will jump into the images here real quick, guys. I'm going to share another screen here. Hope you guys are ready for this. I am. There's that. Okay, so we've got Kirk Montgomery's images here. And unlike earlier this week, I hope you guys can see these images. Philip Mayberry is saying, hey, he's in Saginaw this week. You're still in Michigan, Phil, so you should be okay, right? There's no, I don't know if they're kind of telling you can't travel back and forth to Michigan, right? I hope you're having fun out there. I don't think I've ever been out to Saginaw, so have fun shooting the east side of the state. Right, so make sure we can go back and forth. So this is the visual critique side of the presentation, guys, of our Facebook photo challenge, and this is our gracious host, Kirk Montgomery from WZZM 13. These are some of his images, and I had a chance to select from a few of his that I liked. I'm a big fan of images that are weighted either on the left or right side. It's just something visually that I've always been kind of prone to, just kind of leaning towards as something that I favor. And this one really stood out to me. It's just this sculpture that Kirk has captured coming up from the bottom right-hand side. It's always nice to kind of enter an image from a corner, because if you can enter from a corner or an edge, you can lead us through the image. Now, even though we're not being led out to the opposite corner, we're still being led up. And, you know, I would otherwise kind of be turned off by all the negative space in this photo if the sky were all blue, right? If it was, again, landscapes or images that have the sky in it, typically aren't that interesting if there's just blue sky. You need something else there. Clouds are always a huge additive and bonus when you're shooting landscapes. So luckily Kirk was able to capture this on a cloudy day, so we have like this negative blue space. If you guys can see my mouse, it kind of wraps around this sculpture here. And what I love about this kind of negative space is that even though we've got this kind of like bubble of blue that looks like New York, if you guys can see this, it looks like the state of New York. I'm drawing this outline right here. It actually does look like the state of New York. The clouds around it, the wispy clouds, take up that negative space. And that's what really complements it. We've got the white in the clouds, we've got the white in the sculpture, so it's just kind of this nice kind of bounce parallel where we're bouncing all this negative space with this positive space over here on the right. And I think it's really great. Now, we talked about different times of day with shooting, and like that early morning golden hour and that late night golden hour. And this is going to be something that was taken, you know, later in the day because we've got direct sunlight, it's a hard light, we've got hard shadows on the sculpture. So we know that it's a hard light shooting situation, and the sun's coming from like over here to from the top left. So it's probably shot around maybe 5 o'clock or 3 o'clock, 3 to 5 o'clock in the afternoon. But what is nice here is because it is really bright direct sunlight, it's going to have the closest thing to white properties. If it was shot early in the morning or shot later in the evening, we wouldn't get the same bounce off and parallel between the color of the white here and the color of the white of the clouds. It would be much different. It would be like warm oranges and maybe yellows versus more whites, and which would still work because complementary colors for blue is orange. So that could have worked, but I really just like just a clean white and blue color palette right here. Another one of my favorites that I pulled out was this one of Pierre Marquette, I think over Memorial Day weekend or Independence Day, something like that. But what I really loved were the mind loves repetition, the mind loves patterns. We always kind of go for that, and it's always nice to kind of break up a pattern. So how are we doing that here? Well, there's a lot of visual elements that are working really good. Number one, we've got leading lines. We've got these lines starting from the left in the rail, and those kind of follow out all the way to the end of the photo. So if you guys can see my mouse right here on the left, we've got the lines just kind of leading us through the image, And the pattern is going to be, we've got these flags that are creating this pattern all the way down, right? So our mind likes to like, oh, this is a pattern. We're going to kind of follow and hopscotch along, not just even follow this leading line, but kind of hopscotch along the lines of the flags. We've got the second one in focus, which is nice because we're isolating one, which I think it's one of the ones that's waving the best. It's kind of like in that nice, perfect little wave. You know, we're probably shooting at like an f4 or 5.6 because the one in the foreground's blurred and the ones immediately behind it are starting to blur out as well. We don't have full depth of field. We don't have maximum focus from foreground to background, which is nice just to isolate on one. But what I do like is I love how the south pier head is bookended between two flags in the end. This is kind of what they call a frame within a frame. And what it does is it breaks the pattern because we've got flag, 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 stop. It breaks the pattern. We got another flag, flag. It's flag, 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 south pier, flag, flag. And that's kind of the nice thing is that it's that visual resting point in the image. So we're being led all through the image and boom, there's the south pier head. And then we can kind of continue on with the rest of the pattern. And there's that curved line, not just the diagonal line, but we've got the curved line of the lighthouse pier head in the channel that kind of leads us out to the right of the photo. So we're entering in from the left and we're being led out to the right. And that's just a nice kind of solid movement with that little resting place in the background. And finally, we had this really beautiful silhouettes. He said this was sunrise at the station. And what I love about this is, you know, it's kind of symmetrical. We've got the light pole in the middle of the frame. But a lot of people would be like, oh, I want to see more of the foreground because I want to see more information there. But I really see this more or less about the sky. It's really kind of that visual on just the sky and just that nice, deep plum gradient from the top to the bottom. And it's, you know, compositionally, there's not a lot happening. It's really just kind of the feeling of the colors is what is really kind of resonating with me. And that's what I really liked about this photo because it's just a really great sunrise shot. So we'll just quickly see what you guys are saying about things. Karen says that she loves the flag. We got Karen saying top fan right here. Todd Merritt says top fan. I don't know who you guys are referring to. Top fan of who? Top fan of somebody. So T-Ford says hi. Karen says she loves the flags. And Karen is also saying, I lived in England for 3 years, so I'll talk English sometimes. So yeah, that's fun. So getting back to some of my images here, guys. So these are my favorites of West Michigan. This is going to be Empire Bluffs, one of my favorite places to be. You know, I talk about week to week the, you know, triangles. Todd and Brad Reed like triangles. I've got this triangle right here. I've kind of got that leading line from the bottom left edge, kind of leading you through, and you kind of rest on the tree. And there's that curved line in the background that kind of curves it into this portion back here. What I loved, you know, this would be a good example of analogous colors because all these colors are next to each other in the color wheel. We've got a little bit of orange, yellow, green to the teals and the blues, and that's really all one side of the color wheel, right? So it's a very analogous image that can have very calming, you know, calming things is what analogous colors can kind of imply is a calming feeling. One of my favorite spots, again, very left-weighted as far as where my content is because I've got this tree right here on the left edge of the photo, and there's a lot of negative space to the left. Cloudy day. If this was just a blue sky, this image would not have as much interest as it being filled with clouds. So I'm really happy for that. And, you know, I talk about shutter speed and motion and freezing time. We can see that the wind was blowing here in this photo. And this is just a down-resed image for TV guys, so don't mind my quality here. But you can see that the wind is blowing from left to right in the frame, and I'm freezing the wind. Now, I could have done a slower shutter speed, and that would have given me more kind of blur, and that would have given you more of a feeling that the wind was blowing through the trees. But I really wanted to just freeze that moment in time because you can still kind of elicit that feeling of motion. But if you wanted to kind of express it even further, we could slow our shutter speed down to like a 30th of a second or something like that. I'm a big fan of the night sky, so this is the night sky from Ludington near Big Sable Point Light up in the state park. And that light near the horizon is going to be not the setting sun. Those are just, that's light pollution kind of coming up from the light bouncing off the clouds in Ludington, Michigan. And then you've got that nice core of the Milky Way kind of leading up through the image. What I've started to do a lot lately is trying to use the Milky Way as an implied line. So having it really move from left to right, that top left corner, the bottom right corner, that's really what I'm aiming for. This was more or less, like, I've got the Milky Way at a slight angle, not too much, because it's later in the year. It's going to be closer in the fall, late August, early September. And as the year goes on, if we start in May, or even earlier than May, the Milky Way is kind of parallel to the ground. And it's just like a hand on the clock. As time goes on, throughout the night, it just kind of ticks up, and through the year, we'll kind of get to this point near where we're at now, midsummer. And then it'll start to tip backwards in October, so it's going the opposite way. So that's just something to think about when you're shooting the Milky Way. But using that to your advantage, because different times of the year, you're going to have, like, which way is it going to fall in the subject that I'm looking at. So if I want to shoot the Milky Way kind of going through a Little Sable Point light, and I want it to go this way, I'm going to shoot later in the year versus it going this way, and how I'm going to have that play out to if I'm going to stand more to the north or more to the south when I take my photo. So those are things to think about. Very much like this photo here, one of my earlier ones, is that you can see the Milky Way going this way, which means it was shot after September, more in the October area, because it's no longer up and down. It's more right to left and then left to right. And I'm using it to run from one corner of the image to the other, so from bottom left to top right, and it's kind of draping the silhouette of Little Sable Point light. And this is not the setting sun, guys. A lot of people think that, but that's the light pollution from the other side of the lake. And I think that's Sheboygan, which is directly across the lake there. One of my favorites, we talked about the magic hour. This is something I shot, I think, in May. I did a lot of sunsets in May. We kind of got those nice low clouds. The weather's starting to warm up. We got some waves. And, you know, even though the sun has that nice golden light here, you can see how it's got like this amber look on the grass, and how it's just side lighting that, and the nice little highlight we're getting on the grasses there, the dune grass. And I really love that, because there's a harsh contrast because it's hard light, so we get this nice side lighting with the shadows. But we've got a lot of this great light in the sky kind of bouncing off the clouds, and so there's a lot of different tonal ranges happening here. You know, we've got pure white, we've got some blacks in the shadow, we got a lot of 3/4, half tones, and quarter tones in there with the sky, the clouds, and everything. So really a lot working for it. You know, rule of thirds right here. We got that chunk of third down here horizontally, 2/3 up top. And again, visually right weighted. Again, I like to kind of shift my photos heavy in one direction or the other. Very right weighted, kind of moving you this way through the clouds and through the sunset, kind of creating this motion here counterclockwise. One of my favorite sunsets that I've ever taken, back in 2015, I believe, had the chance to test the EM5 Mark II from Olympus, and it was raining. It was a really bad day. We did this photo, we were going to do this photo walk, and we got down there, the beach was all wet, and there was only 3 people who joined us, because everyone else figured, like, well, it's raining, they're not going to go out. I told everyone when we got down there, in about 5 or 10 minutes, this thing's going to open up and look like something you've never seen. So what I'm saying in this is that roll the dice on a rainy day, because if the clouds decide to open up at the lake after a storm passes through and it's not that big, you're going to get some amazing sunsets, and this was one of them. I've never been able to duplicate these colors in post-production. This was right out of the camera, and I'm using the conventional rule of thirds, where I've got that third down here on the bottom, and I got 2/3 up top, and just some amazing color out of this. Jonathan is saying that he posted the link to Todd and Brad Reed's interview on our page for those who were interested, so he's just kind of letting everyone know that you can access that. It looks like maybe on a recent post on our page. Let's see, just kind of going back on some of these. Jason Helmer saw your sunflower and storm clouds. That's from Karen. She appreciates that. Todd says, what editing program are you using, Justin? Well, I try to keep things pretty minimalistic. I'm using Bridge to view these photos right now. For you guys to be able to view them, you could do the same thing with Lightroom. I will edit a lot of my things actually in Camera Raw now, which is very much what Lightroom is. Lightroom is encompassing what Bridge is, with more sorting capabilities and sorting and kind of documenting things so you can kind of organize your files a little bit better with Lightroom. But they've incorporated the raw processing area to Lightroom. So instead of Bridge opening up raw in a separate window, you get to see everything right there, so that you get all your little, levels and stuff like that you can adjust. Which would make it easier for me to show you guys what I'm editing before I bring it into Photoshop. Photoshop ends up being my second stop in the process, where I'll do all my quick refinement, like my quick edits with RAW, or in your case Lightroom if you're using that. And actually I'm quite happy with a lot that I get just from my RAW editing, because what I try to do when I go out and shoot right away is I'm trying to make sure my image, and I was taught this in school, is that you want to do the most amount of work in your camera first. A lot of people will say, oh, I'll fix that in Photoshop. No, what you have to be ready for is that you can't fix it in Photoshop. You should be able to have it right in the camera to begin with. And that just means that you have less work on the back end. So I always encourage everyone to try to get it right in camera first before taking it to post-production. So when I get done doing my edits in Bridge, so Camera Raw, I'm really not changing too much. I'm really adjusting the exposure maybe a little bit, correcting the white balance if I have to. From there, I might adjust a little bit of the clarity. I know Todd and Brad Reed kind of bumped the clarity anywhere from 10 to 20. But beyond that, if you bump the clarity too much, or you do, there's a new one that gets rid of the dehazing, it starts to get too contrasty and too crunchy. So you got to be really careful. And I like things to look very natural. I don't like things to look too out of this world, so I will teeter and start to flirt with a little bit of the photo surrealism, where it's or hyperrealism, where you're getting to the point of it looks too good to be true, and that's the thing where I don't want it to be over processed. It's just flirting with that edge of again, surrealism, hyperrealism, but it still feels natural. And what I'm trying to do is really trying to convey how I saw the image. And that's what's going to be nice about everyone's post-production style, if you're going to kind of finish your images off with anything as far as editing goes, is that you could take the same image, but your editing style is always going to be intrinsically unique to yourself. And that's something that's like your secret sauce. So I would just encourage you to whatever you end up using for your editing program, because there's a ton out there to use. Just make sure it invokes who you are, right? I mean, that's another medium that it's passing through. Not only is it passing through the camera when you capture the image, but it's also part of that production when you bring it to bear. Now, there's a lot of people who just make sure everything's good in camera, and they're very naturalist, where they're like, if my camera can't do it, I'm not going to edit it, So they're really trying to do everything in camera, and you can do that with your JPEGs. A lot of cameras allow you to change your sharpness, your contrast, your saturation. So if you're just going to create JPEGs in your camera, you just take that shot and you're done. You don't have to worry about all this raw processing. But raw processing gives you the most amount of information to work with, so you can make very dynamic changes in your images. From raw processing, you can take it over to Photoshop, and you look at your raw processor or Lightroom as your global changes. So you're able to affect a lot of images at once, and pick your winners. Maybe 5 images from a set of 100. And then make your local changes in Photoshop. So Photoshop ends up being kind of like my fine detail work, where I need to kind of adjust one local area. Like as an example, if I go back to this image here, if I wanted to highlight or paint in the clouds a little bit darker, add some contrast, I could kind of go up here and kind of mess with the contrast in the clouds, or I could brighten up the bottom right-hand corner to make the grass kind of pop a little bit more against the sun. That would be what I would call local changes. Or if there was like a piece of trash in the beach I needed to clone out, that would be a local change. So that's what Photoshop is good for. And I also like to use it for Nik software, NIK software. A lot of my processes and recipes come from that. So a lot that would be considered like actions. A lot of photographers will purchase actions. But I've actually created a lot of my own recipes because I love the film attributes that Nik software has. So I like to kind of use what, the pre-selected, Kodak 400 gold or, 200, AGFA 400, things of that nature. So I hope that answers your question. Long way of getting to that, but I wanted to make sure I answered that fully. The Western Lights we call it the orange horizon, is what Arm Christensen says, and I think he's talking about the lights at the horizon in those night photos. So I'll kind of continue through, guys, get through some of mine so we can get to yours. All right, so again, just kind of draping against a sunset. This is after the sun has well gone down. I love silhouettes. Silhouettes are really powerful because you're taking the color out of it. You're making it more about the shapes. And after all, the color here is that nice gradient from kind of that deep purple all the way into the red. So we get this nice gradient from top to bottom. We got these really interesting wispy clouds centering the lighthouse here. But what I do love is, again, this is a lower resolution photo. I've got a higher res on my other thing, but you can see this guy sitting here. And I always talk about the human element in images, and if you can add that human element, you're humanizing it for the viewer. They're kind of like, oh, I see a person there, and you can kind of put yourself in that position where there's this lone person sitting and watching the sunset, and it kind of gives you the opportunity of, like, what's that guy thinking? What is he feeling? What would I be doing out there if I were out there kind of seeing things? And that was just something, it's always nice to kind of humanize your images. One of my favorites from Point Betsy with the Northern Lights last year. I wish the lights were a little bit more happening, but that's the most I got, and a lot of people didn't get anything that weekend. But it's always a fun place to go and capture. PJ Hoffmaster, talk about leading lines with the planks of wood and kind of leading you out through the back. The canopy acts as a natural vignette. I did this image in black and white because in color, because it's middle of the summer, we got this bright light. The green, because it was like midday, the greens were just really kind of kicking and kind of casting their green color cast because the light's shining through it. So really the boardwalk was kind of this almost like a green color cast to it, a green tint, because of all the light passing through the trees. And if color is a distraction, you remove it. How to remove it? You change the image to black and white. I use Nik software, Silver Effects Pro, to do this, and then you can kind of click through and choose different film representations. And I like to use AGFA on that because AGFA kind of gives me that nice blend of contrast. It's not too heavy-handed, so it's not like super white and super black, and there's not a lot of gray tones in between. AGFA just kind of gives me this nice overall tonality. And again, it allowed me to kind of vignette this image where I get this natural vignette with the tree canopy and the shadows right here before the light kind of hits the center part. And that just kind of leads you naturally in because it's a lighter spot of the photo compared to the darker spot. Just one of my other favorites, just doing a star trail with my Sony or Canon camera, one of the two. And, just kind of going for symmetry, looking at the North Star and creating that clockwise turn. Just a fun night shooting the night sky, one of my favorites. Again, using the Milky Way as kind of that leading line, doing the bottom interest as like a third, and using the top portion of the image to really just kind of set the tone. Where that's where the most visual interest is, even though we got this little smidge of interest in the bottom visually, but we got these nice leading lines with the clouds moving from bottom left up to the top right with that diagonal line there, kind of creating that feel of motion moving through the image on the right from the left. And then the Milky Way kind of leads us into that light down on the bottom. So you can kind of start at the top, kind of move down to where that light is. And it's just a fun image, one of my favorites from West Michigan. So getting into your guys' images, we'll start with Amanda Dykhouse here. And I love this shot. This is kind of like what we talk about, with doing abstract photos or just getting closer. Probably from Tulip Time, I'd be willing to bet and assume, either from her own garden or going down to Holland. Very beautiful shots. A lot of people sometimes with macro try to get the full depth of field, which means they're getting sharpness from foreground to background, but I really love the bokeh choice here to focus just on this one petal here on the left, filling most of the frame. That's another thing too that I don't talk a lot about. When we go over the tips and tricks. It's always good to fill the frame. Sometimes you can cut things off. You don't have to leave it kind of loose fitting so that everything, like the whole tulip, is in the middle of the frame and you got negative space on the outside. We're cutting the tulip off. We're not seeing all of it. That's what we're talking about, filling a frame. But what I really love with the softness of the petals from the depth of field with the shot is this nice line that comes up on this petal. I mean, just look at that. That to me, it's like I like the little lines that come off of this. It kind of reminds me of a feather. It's just like it just kind of like it's this nice kind of silky smooth kind of feeling. Like if you look closely, it's almost like a brush stroke. You know, that someone just kind of took a brush, they put it in the paint with like there was already pink wet paint on the canvas. Kind of took a brush with a little bit of white in kind of the intermittent areas and just kind of hit the canvas and just kind of wiped it up and through. And it's just kind of this nice kind of brush stroke to kind of lead us up from the bottom and kind of out. And really that's the point of interest. But it has this just soft kind of gentle feel to it, and I really love this. And the detail's great. I mean, you can really get in here and kind of see the detail. It's, you know, the petal is soft even to the touch. You know, petals are always soft, so it kind of even gives you that tangible feel that it's eliciting the softness with the depth of field, and that's kind of the thing that you want, right? Like I can feel this flower just by looking at it, and that's the thing, that's the powerful thing about imagery, when you can really get down to the mental part of it. And there's also some complementary colors going on here because there's a green background and pink is really close to red, so we've got this contrasting background. So we got the green and the pink can really stand out from that. You know, if there were more pink flowers in the background, we might get a little distracted or lost in this without having this little green border from the background. So very nice job with that. She also submitted this one of the, I think it's like pancake ice in winter. I'm going to say this is sometime in late January. This is going to be a sunset, probably about 5:45, 5:20 in the evening, and really nice low, cold, crisp, wispy clouds in the horizon. When you see rules of thirds being applied in images, typically the biggest chunk, the 2/3 that's filled with the most information, is going to be the visual interest, and the third of the image that remains is the lesser of visual interest in your entire photo. And this is going to be the case with this guy here, because she's really kind of focusing on the pancake ice kind of flowing through the field, and it's really interesting. And if Amanda, if you're tuning in, would love your permission to kind of go back and maybe kind of do a little quick editing on this to kind of see just how much we could push and pull out of this. Because I think there's it's in the evening, you might have just kind of gotten this right out of camera, but I think there's a little bit more that we could pull out of it to kind of just make it pop a little bit more. So if you're tuning in and you want us to do that, please give me your permission. I'll do that near the end. This is going to be Brian Lynch. Brian has 2 images. You know, Brian, I'm really glad you submitted the silver sides. I know I think we've had some other images of the silver sides. It's really hard to make this shot successful because there is a lot of clutter around where it's moored down here in the Muskegon Channel. And I love that you captured it in such a way. You captured it in the fog, in the mist, and you shot it at a high aperture. It's probably going to be f/16 or greater, and I can tell that because I'm looking at all the radial bursts around all the lights. That creates more visual interest than if we shot it at a wider aperture like f4, f5.6, because we would just have these soft globes of light, and these radial bursts just add more interest and more flair to our image. We got this nice leading line from the bottom left, you know, leading us through to the back of the image, and we've got this kind of opposing visual diagonal line coming from the bow of the ship going all the way back to kind of the stern, where those 2 lines are going to meet in this vanishing point back here. Now this one, Brian, if you're paying attention, I would also love to do something like what we did with Chuck DeWitt's image last week, and if you're tuning in, would love to kind of do another edit with this to kind of see if we could make this pop, you know, doing a black and white. So if you want us to do that and you're tuning in, feel free to give me your permission. Would love to be able to do that. We've got some comments coming in. Phil's saying, I always wanted to try a Milky Way shot. Go for it. Just make sure you have the right lens and the camera all day long. Karen's saying, gorgeous shot in Ludington of the Milky Way. Thank you. We've got, well, that's a beautiful sunset. Love the red and the purples, Justin. Thank you, Karen. And Amanda is saying, go for it. So Amanda, will come to that later, so tune in, guys. Again, I'm not going to try to rush through these. I want to give everyone fair credence on their images. This is also from Brian. This, I forgot where this was. He had it in his email. I've been out to this trestle and this little waterfall. I wanted to shoot this in the same way. He got out there on a day. It's a little overcast. It might be in the morning, just before the sun is really starting to come up, because it looks like there's a little bit of fog kind of looming in the background. But he's got it on the perfect time of the year, the fall. That's the most visual interest. There's a lot of color happening. He's got the perfect wispiness to the waterfall, so he's got probably a couple seconds. I would say maybe 2 seconds for an exposure. Maybe up to 3, not anything beyond that, because once you start to get beyond that, you start to lose a lot of the perfect milky wispiness. Because if you go too long, it just looks like someone took dried ice and kind of threw it in water, and it just looks like fog kind of rolling over your image. You can tell there's a little bit of a blue sky trying to open up over here, so that's why I'm saying it's early morning where there's a lot of fog. I got the fog down here, so I'm wondering if we would have waited maybe another hour or so, but you probably had to go to work. It could have opened up and there might be that nice little hint of light coming on it to just kind of brighten it up just a little bit. But because of the overcast, it's hard to kind of get that nice true contrast because of a little bit of overcast. But I love the composition. I love the trestle here. For not having waterfalls really in Lower Michigan, this is as good as it gets, and I really appreciate you sharing that with us, Brian. Now we're getting into Carol DeWitt. So this is Carol. These are Carol's images, and this is the first time. I don't know, Chuck, if you convinced your wife to submit, or she finally said, "I want to participate." Or if you handed her one of your extra cameras to kind of get her going. Whatever the story is there, Chuck, I'm sure you'll share it with us. But I'm so happy to see that your wife is participating with us this week. And what I really want to stress in this image, and I'm really glad that we have a new participant, is I talked about the human factor, right, with the images. What do humans do outside of kind of that normal interaction? Like, oh, there's people interacting with this environment. It sets scale, right? And this is Silver Lake sand dunes. You can tell because we got one of the dune buggies out here. And what I love is just the scale of this image, right? It's not quite the rule of thirds. We're kind of splitting our interest between one half blue sky, one half sand and dune grass. But there is this nice little layer right here. This is like 1/3 right here of the dune grass. So it's like things always are nice in layers, and we got this nice little layer here with the sand and these people, right? And that helps to create the scale. And I love how they're all looking in this direction, like towards the flagpole. We've got this nice layer of green with that kind of spotted dune grass in the middle, and then that third layer in the background with just the people just kind of walking around, and just the scale between here, and it just shows you kind of the enormity of Silver Lake sand dunes. And then it would have been nice to have some clouds in the sky, but I actually really like it just with the blue, because it makes it more like the visual weight is down towards the bottom. And this would be one thing, Carol, that right now this is a 2:3 aspect ratio. If you made this 16:9, you could actually crop kind of like another inch out of the sky and kind of cut it up like right here. And that would even put more of an emphasis on the people in the image, while still maintaining this enormity to the image. Because now we would be shrinking the sky down a little bit, and we'd be dragging it out so it'd be a little wider, almost like a panel print. It's more like what your TV ratio is, and I think you'd have a lot of fun with that. And Brian Lynch is saying the trestle was in Hamilton, Michigan. He says that picture is taken in the evening. So I was wrong, and that's okay. It's good to be wrong, but there's kind of some of the things happening with that. So thank you for that. And her camera is a Sony point and shoot. So she did this with a point and shoot camera. So this is even really interesting. RM Christian is saying Rabbit River in Hamilton, and Brian is saying, hey, we can go back and go kind of edit his Silversides picture. So I'll try to come back to those two guys. So bear with me as we kind of keep on flowing through. This is another one. You guys must have been on a boat or something, Chuck. Get to have a fun time. I love this too. It's just, these are like really great shots that I would love to see kind of like in a catalog for like, hey, if you go out here and do this, you can have, this is how much fun you can have. And maybe you weren't on a boat. I think there's a big lake right there, and maybe you're just on the other side of the lake zooming in. Regardless, this is still a great shot. I'm a little distracted by these guys right here because there's another boat pulling them. But I know you don't want to miss out on this moment right here with these guys going down the hill, and it's a perfect point in that we got this nice leading line from the top. And this is kind of what I was talking about, like cropping that sky out of the other image, is that you've kind of got that going on right here. But what's nice about what you're mirroring is you got this nice sliver of blue on the top, and you got the nice sliver of blue on the bottom with this chunk of sand in the middle. And I like those layers, right? Because we got blue on blue, and it's like this nice little Oreo sandwich kind of thing, right? And it's like a double stuffed Oreo. And what I love is just you caught this moment of people going down in the dune buggy with their hands up in the air. I think it's just a great moment. Again, kind of wondering, like, if we zoomed in, we can't really crop it effectively here, but I'm kind of wondering what it would look like if these guys were cropped out right here. And a lot of people are like, oh, I can Photoshop them out. Well, sometimes it just means, like, how can we line it up just right to where, you know, you can crop it in such a way that you're still maintaining it without seeing them. But even though they're a little bit of a visual distraction because they're kind of creating this tension kind of down here in this bottom left corner, it still kind of adds to everything because we've got this triangle of things happening. We've got the boat leading to the dune buggy, and the dune buggy kind of these people, and it looks like the guy is kind of pointing like this, you know, off the frame. So what's kind of nice is you're kind of like, I wonder what he's pointing at over there. So it is kind of leading you out of the frame. But I enjoy it. These are great shots with a little Sony point and shoot camera. You know, they almost look painted or illustrated, and that's kind of the fun thing. That's what I love about them. This is another one from Carol. This is her. This is in Holland, Michigan, at the windmill, and we've got the nice clouds in the sky. Probably going to be shot around the late afternoon, early evening is what I'm guessing. With the sun going down, or wait, which way is that facing? That's facing east to west. So really, this is earlier in the morning. So maybe 11-ish on a somewhat cloudy day because we're getting a little bit of diffused light. I can tell it's diffused light because we got nice quality light here, but I've got hard shadows from the windmill, and they're not completely soft and not completely hard. So there's the sun's kind of trying to push through some of the clouds there. But a nice shot of the windmill kind of evenly keeled right here in the middle of the frame. So really nice shot there as well, Carol. So thank you for participating this week. I really appreciate you doing that. She says, no, Chuck was saying that they were on the South Shore, and these were all handheld. So yeah, I thought they might be on a boat, but then again, I remembered there's a big water area out there. And Karen said those are great dune shots. And Chuck is saying in the afternoon, so I was right. So even though I was wrong on Brian's photo, I was right on this one. So I'm redeeming myself here. This is going to be Charles Sutton, and Charles has this nice one, very reminiscent of what we're getting with Carol's here. You know, kind of being centered and not quite symmetrical, but centered. We've got this centered tree on the top of a dune, and I'm wondering, I've seen these trees before. I'm wondering, Charles, if you're tuning in, that these might be on the back half of Muskegon Lake on the channel right there going out into the lake. Because I saw those trees on the top of the dune. I'm like, hey, those look interesting. But you got it on we've got some soft light, so the same thing's kind of happening. I think the sun's being diffused by the clouds. And I can tell the sun's coming from the left side of the frame because I've got a shadow on the right side, which means the sun is to the left. So it's still early afternoon. Early afternoon, the sun's up here somewhere, and we're getting that light kind of coming down, maybe 12-ish, 1-ish, through some diffused wispy clouds. But I love the composition. It kind of all leads up to the top of the hill, trees in the center, nice clouds in the background, and that's what you want out of a lot of your photos. Whoa, zoomed in. This is going to be Chuck DeWitt. So we're on Chuck's images, and he's shooting these boats. Chuck, I'm wondering if these are on Muskegon Lake or Lake Michigan. I'm going to say Lake Michigan, maybe from the shoreline somewhere or the end of the pier, because there's a lot of fog out on Lake Michigan. Correct me if I'm wrong. I know these guys like to race in the middle of Muskegon Lake, so I'm kind of wondering where and when you got these. I could be totally wrong, and you're in Grand Haven and shooting out from the Grand Haven pier, but I'm going to say maybe April, May on these. Nice golden light coming from the left. So maybe Lake Michigan with the sun getting ready to set. So I'm still going to say early April, May on those. Don't know if I'm right. Grand Haven, North Pier, and shot in the afternoon. These boats. Is that what you're saying, Chuck? The South Shore handheld. That was the. Yeah. So he said September. Oh man, I'm kind of striking out here today. I'm trying though. But that's the challenge. That's what I love doing, right? It's kind of trying to figure out when you shot it. But it is from Grand Haven, North Pier, is what you're saying, or North Pier, out into the channel, with the sun kind of coming around towards the evening, right? That's what we're saying. So kind of nice to see fog. So there must have been something that was happening where either the lake was really warm or it was really cold and the air was really warm or cold, something like that. But great shots there. Love the color and the subject matter kind of centered up there. You got this crazy one, really tumultuous. I'm wondering, this was probably this year. This was probably last week sometime, I would think, when we had some of the trouble down in Grand Haven, where people should not have been swimming when they shouldn't have been swimming, kind of thing. Got some surfers here, or maybe it's October. Maybe it's October last year or something like that, because I know the weather gets kind of crazy. The lake starts doing some crazy stuff. Karen says she really loves the beautiful contrast in the two vessels, and I do too. Color versus kind of monochromatic black and gold. Really like that. So Chuck, I'd be interested to know when you took this guy here. But what I really love about this, it's very monochromatic. Monochromatic means it could be black and white, but it's really all of like one color spectrum. It's really like a lot of yellows and golds and oranges, like they're all of the same color palette, just kind of changing the tint from white to black. And really love the silhouettes here. This big plume of a wave kind of being backlit in this highlight right here with these nice clouds. This nice strong highlight here. There's just a lot of great kind of positive negative space happening here because of contrast and silhouettes. So really like what you got going on here. Let's see what you said. No, a few years ago in late September. So yep, we're getting towards that kind of tumultuous time of the year. So really cool on that. Ooh, and speaking of silhouettes, lots of stuff going on here. A busy day on the pier for sure in Grand Haven. Lots of fishermen. Lots of seagulls in the background. So I'm wondering if some fish are getting caught because birds tend to kind of hover around where there might be smaller fish or easy pickings for them. So or they're just kind of coming in and going out because of the time of day. They, I know they fly overhead from the landfill and kind of come to the beach or go to the landfill at night. But really great shot here. It's more about the figures versus the people, and that's what I love about silhouettes, is that it makes it more about the shapes than the actual detail in the subject themselves. Nice leading line and triangles. We got this triangle here. Leading us from bottom right to top left, and this triangle of the lake right here, and that divides our kind of image in half with that horizon line. So very nice with that. Very brave subject on the pier, yes, but you know what, Karen, when they go out there and surf, that is the best time of year to do it. And that's why you get a cold weather wetsuit and have fun doing that. Just got to be safe. This is from Karen Brendel. Karen's got the next three. Again, silhouettes and kind of that nice depth of field from the water. This is one of the cool things, is that we're focusing on the subject in the foreground. We're making sure that is sharp, and immediately the detail in the background is going to fall off, and it's going to become, we don't want to be distracted by the sharp ripples of the water. It's kind of nice to kind of get this kind of blurred out image of the water in the background and really make it about the plants in the foreground. So I really like that you've done that with the silhouettes here. One of my favorite shots of the sun is like when you can get the clouds kind of splitting into it. It reminds me of the early license plates that we had in Michigan when I was growing up. I think back in the 2000s we had the really orange and blue license plate. I really like that one better than the ones that we have now. And this screams West Michigan. I mean, that's the whole point of this photo challenge. So really great shot, Karen. I really appreciate these. I would like to have the sun a little bit more centered, but I just love the feeling. This little cloud right here reminds me of like Mount Fuji or something in Japan, so that's kind of like a fun thing too. But really great beaming ball of orange right here, so good job on that. And this is another thing, being blessed with brilliant sunsets, these nice wispy clouds with these nice highlights underneath. Just, it's like a fire in the sky, kind of nice, kind of calm lake here. We got some silhouettes. So it really makes the winner and the hero of the shot the sky and the reflection off the water. So really good job there, Karen. I would also something that would be successful is even just getting rid of the trees and kind of splitting this into a square or a rectangle right here and kind of evenly splitting the water between the sky, or kind of dragging it down a little bit so there's just this little this little shred of water down here, and just this much of sky, maybe isolating, like getting these trees out of here and just kind of taking a big swath out of the center. I think that'd be really cool as well, but I just love this capture. Again, screams West Michigan. We have some of the best sunsets. I don't care who you are. We're really blessed to be here, and so I just want to thank you for those shots. She said the big sunset is like the Settlers of Catan game box, and I wish I could appreciate that comparison because I haven't played that many video games in a while, so I'm trying to like visualize that, but I can't say that I've ever seen it. So thank you for humoring us with that. These are Phil Mayberry's, and he's out in not Sheboygan, Saginaw, Michigan. So he's out on the east side of the state, and these are shots of from him. I think these aren't downtown Muskegon, Phil. If they are, just kind of correct me, but I think they're somewhere else. But I love this shot of the statue. I think last week we kind of like unearthed the fact that you like Nik Software yourself, NIK Software, and you like to do the silver effects as well. And I'm willing to bet that this is a silver effects edit. And you've got a different texture in here this time. So I'm wondering if you messed around with the texture or the grain of the photo in post-production. I'd be interested in how you achieved this. Maybe it's a combination of the camera and the editing, but I love the subject matter, and I've talked about shooting around a subject, and this is a great, he's vignetting it, so he's adding a vignette filter to it, whether that's in it's in post-production, but if it's in Nik Software. What vignettes do is it's dark on the outside, so we kind of forget about what's happening on the outside, and the darkness kind of draws us into the light. And we've got this nice light center, so we're drawn into the image this way, and I just think it's fun subject matter. And what I encourage people to do is shoot around a subject to kind of get an idea of how that subject looks from one perspective to the next, like which perspective is more successful. And he did that. And it is in Muskegon. So this is kind of one of those things where this could kind of place it anywhere, unless you really know about all the things downtown. The one thing that threw me off about this, Phil, is the fact that the shadow is on the right side of the street. So I know that's to the north, so the sun is in the southeast, so it's coming up. So this has got to be like later afternoon downtown, and I'm not used to seeing the shadows run this way. So that's why it threw me off a little bit. Like, is it Muskegon or is it somewhere else, like downtown LA? So you really kind of took some of the visual clues out of it. And I just really like it. So, then I could tell it was Muskegon when I saw this. You know what? I know what you did. I know what you did now. You did Nik Software, but you went to the art filters in Photoshop under a new layer, or when you finalized your Nik Software layer, or duplicated your Nik Software layer, and then put over one of the artistic filters with like the cross-hatching thing, and you just kind of really refined it and made it finer, because there's this little echo around the lamp up here that's causing it to have that texture, because I'm assuming you want to have kind of like this canvasy texture feel outside of the film element. But I love the change of perspective on this, and actually I would like to like get in a little bit closer behind his head, and it would have been interesting, not to be this zoomed in, a little bit less zoomed in, and have something like over here that he might have been looking at outside of the sculpture, or shooting down from this position, kind of shooting up into the sculpture, like almost like over his shoulder would have been a lot of fun. That's something that I'm thinking of. And And Karen is saying that she loves Phil's black and white. R.M. Christensen is saying that the black and white stature pick is top notch, kind of with the 2 thumbs up. And Karen is saying hello to fellow Karen. Thanks, Justin. Still learning. Karen, no, you're doing great stuff. Your images were great, so I appreciate you sharing with us. I continue to encourage you to do that. Next week is the Best of Michigan, so I hope you've got some more to share with us because we would love to see them. Moving along, these are RM Christensen. So we're on to RM. If you're still tuning in, RM. And what I really love what he did here, I know he's shooting with a Sony A6000 something. I don't know if it's a 6000, 61. There's a lot of 6000 series cameras. He's shooting with a high aperture. What I really love what Ryan does is he shoots with the 31.4 Sigma. And what that does is he's shooting with a prime lens, which means he has no zoom. He is the zoom. If he wants to zoom in, he's got to step forward. If he wants to zoom out, he's got to step backwards. The advantages to a prime lens is that you have sharper images because there's not any moving parts. It's just one set focal length. So I know he's shooting here with a high aperture. It's probably, I think Sigma limits their lenses to f16 or 22, so he's not going anything beyond that. And that's why we're getting these radial bursts from the new LED lights on the channel. But and Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong. I want to say that there's some selective color going on here. Like maybe you're using, if the camera allows you to kind of pick a color in the color channel and everything else is black and white. Because I'm wondering if you just did selective color with the red, with the beacon house in the background, or if the lights are just so bright in such a way that they're daylight balanced in such a way, and everything's still fresh and new with the new railing being put in, that it looks like it's black and white. It's really just the lights are that clean. I would like to know what you did with that. No, he's saying selective color is what he's saying. So yeah, I like being able to kind of dissect that. So I actually like that, Ryan. Like when I was in school, like that was one of my things that one of my teachers did not like. She like absolutely held huge disdain for selective color, and it was kind of like one of these things that it was like a gimmicky thing back in the mid 2000s, because I was in school from 2008 to 2012, 2009 to 2012, and selective color was not her thing. And especially if it's like portraits and you have like everything's black and white and you got this like one pink shirt, it doesn't work there. And I love how it's working in your photo, because we expect that to be red, and you're really trying to get people to kind of, you're using that color, that contrast to really draw someone into what we should be looking at. You've got this nice leading line going down the center of the catwalk. And so it's just kind of this oh, he says it's not selective color. So my apologies. Yeah, I got to read that better. No selective color. Thank you, Ryan, for correcting me. So that's great. That's really great. It looks like selective color, but it's not selective color. It just has to do with just all the right elements coming together. It's a really dark night, whether it's really cloudy, so there's no light coming in from the outside source. There's so much light coming from the pier. The catwalk is freshly painted. I'm curious, Ryan, when you might have taken this, just to kind of give me an idea of time frame, like how new the catwalk is, and maybe help me out just with saying like 6 months after everything was installed, something like that would help. But I really love what you did there, so thank you for sharing, and many apologies for not understanding the selective color thing. I should have known that, because you can see a little bit of blue from the lens flare from the LED right there, and that should have been the giveaway, but I wasn't 100% sure. But it's just great that that's how it panned out. So really cool there. And he's saying late fall, so late fall last year, really great. Going back here to the images, and this is his other one here. Nice leading lines. Again, you're kind of being led in by this path. It probably just got done raining, Ryan, it looks like. And the forest or trees look really nice after like a late night rain or early rain, because it looks like the sun is opening up and things are happening here. Being led into the photo across the bridge. I haven't been to this area. I'm trying to think of where this is at, like Duncan Woods or something. but I've seen people walk through this trail before. But really great shot, Ryan, because the light's hitting the background. It's kind of dark in the foreground because you're still under the canopy of the trees, and you're being led from the dark into the light. And that's kind of the nice thing, is that the light is highlighting what we're moving into. He said Ludington State Park. Karen is saying a gorgeous photo, Ryan, in late fall. So really great shot. Love what you got going on there. This is getting into Tammy. Tammy Borgensen is going to be our last one. Tammy has this great shot of just kind of the setting sun over Lake Michigan. And this is kind of monochromatic as well, because we just have the sun isn't quite down below the horizon, so we're not getting a lot of that color bump from the light bending. And you know, I would be interested in seeing this as in a square, because you know, squares can be a hard composition to kind of make work. I'm a little distracted by this wave right here, but kind of lining it up something like this. Square photos can sometimes be the hardest ones to crop, just because it's trying to balance out a square. It's not the same as a rectangle. You can kind of like weight things on the right, you know, weight things on the left, have things kind of in tiers this way. And sometimes squares need to be even, or just they change the way that you crop. So I would encourage you guys to challenge yourself with a square crop. Maybe we make that one of the challenges is you know, shooting as a square and setting your camera, if it has the ability, just to shoot a square and making a square photo successful, because they're supposed to be kind of tricky to just get to work just right. So really appreciate you sharing this, and great subject matter. So I want to thank you guys all for submitting this week and participating. If I missed anyone, I apologize. It's really important, if you guys submit these photos to participate, that we make sure that to label them like best of West Michigan or best of Michigan kind of thing, because there are some best of Michigan and best of West Michigan, and some had come in without any subject line, so I don't know where to put them. So if I missed yours this week, it'll more than likely be in next week's. So make sure to share before then. And I did tell you guys that I was going to, Karen's saying, hey, the challenges are fun. And RM is saying, hey, thanks much, Karen. And thanks, Justin. No problem. We appreciate you participating. And so we're going to go back real quick, just kind of look at a couple people's images, because I said we would. We're going to start with Amanda Dykehouse's image. And because I said that we might be able to kind of bump this and bounce it, and I would like to open it in RAW just to kind of show you just the small changes we can do in RAW, but I'm going to open this up in Photoshop, and I'm just going to stop sharing this screen here. I'm going to open up Photoshop so you guys can all see this. And so I like to work in layers. This is just a tip for all you guys who are working in Photoshop, I never like to work off of the main background layer, because if I make any changes here that I can't fix, I don't want to ruin my original photo. So I always duplicate the background. You can simply drag it down and hit over the plus button. The quick key is Control J. Control J will give you a duplicate of any image that you're or any layer that you're highlighted on. So sometimes I'll even kind of I'll change this to working background, so that I know that that's the one I can mess around with and change. Now, the thing with this is, what I was trying to kind of tell Karen is that we can get a lot, sorry, not Karen, but Amanda, that I think there was still a lot to pull out from this image, that we could still make it kind of pop and sing a little bit more. And the biggest thing is contrast. Contrast is the key to sharpness. It's also nice with an image to have solid whites and solid blacks, and kind of having mountains in between or a valley in between. And I can tell that this image, there's not quite a perfect white, there's not quite a perfect black. Everything, if we change it black and white, would kind of be this 1/4 to 3/4 gray. So what I am going to do first is, one thing I like to use is curves. And this is exactly what I was going to expect out of the histogram. This is something important. So it does say that we have a perfect white over here, because you can kind of see the spike right here that says, hey, there's white. It's probably going to be this highlight back here somewhere, or these highlights right here, that those are kind of the closest thing to white. Our blacks aren't really hitting all the way over to the left edge. I could drag this to kind of, inch up those blacks, but I'm not going to do that right now. the one thing I like to do is you can use this little finger dropper here, and we can go into any of the areas, and you guys can see the corresponding layers. So this is going to be white. This line here is going to be your quarter tones. This is going to be your mid-tones or your mid-grays. These are going to be your three-quarter tones right here. And if I go to each of those areas, you can see that if the teardroppers over here, we're kind of in the three-quarter tones. If we go over here, we're in the mid-tones. If we go over here, we're outside the quarter tones. In the sky, we're near the quarter tones. So we can kind of pull those up and brighten them, right? Or drag them down. So we could kind of we could make an adjustment for the sky right here. And what we could do is we could do a gradient layer. There's a little layer back here. We could make it easy on ourselves, but I'm going to do, you could do a selective tool with just a paintbrush, because we're going to paint in the layer. And then what we could do back there is change our opacity so it's not too high, kind of change it to like 25%. You could change your flow a little bit so it doesn't flow heavy, like 75 up there on the top. And then we're going to paint in black, so I'm going to hit X because that's a quick key, or I could just hit switch down here. So I can hit X as my quick key, and I can start painting in. And actually, I'm painting in the sky, like I'm painting in the brightness. And if you want to see what you're working on, like how you're changing it, you can hit the backslash button. And see that little red that I kind of put on the backslash? That's kind of telling me what I'm affecting. So the red is actually like what I'm painting in. I could change that color in my preferences to like a cyan blue or something like that. But I'm trying not to get below the horizon line because I don't want to change the ice. I really just want to change the sky a little bit. All right, and I don't want to affect the horizon line. A couple ways of doing this. I could do like a gradient, use the gradient tool, the gradient fill for the background, but I'm just going to kind of paint it in like this. Hit the backslash button. And now because I painted it in the opposite, like I brightened the sky back up, I really liked it the way I did it. So I'm going to hit Control-I, and that's going to inverse my selection. So you can kind of see the change that I made to the sky? Kind of pop that just a little bit. I might go back and kind of do some things to it, but I'm going to leave that the same. I'm going to add a new curves layer here. And I can actually go to the teardropper, and I can find something that's supposed to be like perfectly white. And I'm going to go to maybe this ice patch right there. Select that. Whoa. I made that really white. Let's see. Click on this. Really white. Too white. Control-Z. Undo. Undo. Maybe do gray. Maybe we'll do gray off of this. Nope. Too yellow. What I'm doing is trying to sample off the ice, and you're trying to find something that's white. Really hard to do because there's nothing here that's going to be pure white because you got some color happening. This would be like the closest patch, and that's still too much. So I'm not going to do it that way. But I am going to go down to the drop-down layer, and I'm going to select the curves and just kind of some of the presets. And I can kind of go through and kind of change this. Now, see, this is what they call an S-curve. And the reason the S-curve is popular is because it's going to pull the contrast, because what we're trying to do is trying to pull some more information out of the top of the ice, but kind of drop some of these shadow areas right here. And you can tell that we're affecting the image as a whole, but increased contrast is too much. Lighter contrast is not what we want because it doesn't give us any blacks. We're kind of moving everything to the right. Linear contrast gets closer, but we still want a little bit more from that S-curve, so we can kind of grab this selection. We can kind of pull this up just a little bit right here. See how we're kind of pulling the contrast? And I can use this anchor point, or I can create a new one. Kind of pull that down. See how we're just kind of pulling a little bit out of that ice? We're just kind of pulling this S-curve down a little bit. Just try to wrenching a little bit more. And we can leave that as one of our changed layers. I'm going to turn this off the sky. So now you can just see what we're affecting. See how we changed the contrast there? We just bumped the contrast. So we're adding a little bit of that exposure back in the foreground. And now the background is too bright, right? So we're already kind of changing that layer. Well, now I can go back into this layer here, and you can see that I've got my anchor point where I've made my adjustment. So now I can kind of mess around with my sky. And I can just change, because I'm just affecting the sky. I could go through and make that custom, or I can kind of go to darker. I could go to increase contrast, linear, lighter, and I can go to negative. I can go to strong, or custom. And none of those did it, so we're just going to undo. And I really just like the fact that, you know, I could go in with this little selector tool, and I know I've got my whites, so my whites are right there, right? So you can pull this up and kind of push the whites up a little bit, and then see how we're kind of affecting that S-curve, and then we can go find a darker color like this over here, kind of pull that down a little bit, right? So we're just kind of pulling this information down a little bit. Now we're able to kind of push the sky, and now we just got this. This is where we started, and that's what we're able to do. Now the sky might be too much. You're kind of saying like, well, Justin, you overdid the sky. Well, this is what the opacity tool is for. I can go through and kind of just change the opacity on the layer that I'm affecting. So if the sky was too much, I just go back to the sky, and I can just kind of dial it up, dial it down. I will kind of stick at maybe 90%. And if I want to kind of finish it off, I can go all the way up to the top. I can go to my levels, and this is where I've got my blacks, my whites, and my blacks, my midtones, and my whites. My whites are good. I can adjust my midtones just to kind of see where my midtones are at. You know, add maybe just a little bit of that. Just kind of push it down just a little bit. See if I can add my blacks back into it. But if I do that, I'm going to want a little bit more white. Trying to flirt with it, trying to not change it too much. How am I feeling about that? Regardless, it's not perfect, but I would like to kind of mess around with it a little bit more without changing it too much. But look at just these 3 layer changes. And this is, Todd, if you're still watching, this is what I'm talking about, local changes. You can kind of see this is where we started. And that's where we've ended. So you can just see how much more we're kind of like able to pull out of that image and just kind of make it pop a little bit. So let's see, Karen is saying that that's looking great. So let's see, and this was Amanda Dykhouse. So Amanda, I hope you're kind of seeing this. I would like to use my recipes. So Nik Software has a color thing real quick. I'll just quick do that, and then we'll get to the black and white, and we'll call this done. So I'm going to kill all these changes that I made. You guys might not be able to see what I'm doing now just because we're going to open up in a separate window. I'm going to go to my Color FX from Nik Software, and I'm just going to quickly use one of the film presets, and then I'll kind of pop that back on the screen. You guys can see just what I was able to get from using one of the film presets here. So just bear with me. I've got like kind of 20 plus ones to go through before I can find the one that is going to be just right. And I might have to... Yeah, I'm going to look at one of my recipes real quick here, guys. So just bear with me. I need to find the one that's going to make the sunset sing really good here. And all my presets of things that I've made, I'm looking through like 100 recipes. Ooh, that one's like really moody. That one's too much. How was this one? What does this one do for me? Yeah, we could do this. So I'm going to do this one. I've kind of got this one where I want... oh, that doesn't do it for me. I thought I had it, but I don't. Let's just see real quick. The tricky thing is a sky. So I'm actually just going to leave it kind of like this. I actually kind of like that. So my Nik Software thing didn't do what I wanted to do. But again, turn it all off. That's what you get. We're kind of lacking some contrast. Boom. Turn that all back on. You can kind of see just how much more it pops because we're kind of enriching the blacks. We're pushing the whites. We're looking for more detail up here in the sky. And if you wanted to, just a little bit, let's say it felt too cold, you could go into the photo filter and you could add the warming filter to it. And that kind of changes, that would be like changing your white balance in your camera. We're kind of warming it up. So now we're making the entire image, instead of feeling blue, see this blue gives it this ice cold feel, and that's quite all right. But we can kind of make it a little warmer, kind of hint this little warmth of light from the sunset on the bottom here. So you can really just kind of see the difference between the two feels of the moods. So you can play with it either way you want. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Real quick, we'll get to Brian Lynch. I said that we would kind of do yours in Photoshop and kind of see what we could get out of it in black and white. Again, I'm going to open this up. I'm always going to create a duplicate layer. I'm going to just name that real quick, working background, just in case I wanted to change anything in the background. I could use it. I'm going to go in Nik Software and kind of mess around with this, but the way to do it, to show you guys just kind of what you're doing, is really we can just go to the black and white filter that's right down here at the bottom. You just click on this little area here, and you'll see the black and white filter. You can immediately kind of turn it on and turn it off. The first thing that we could do is, when we made it grayscale, you can see that the contrast kind of went away on this, so we can go to curves. And with curves, we know that these lights are white, so I'm just going to go back. The ones near the end are white, so I'm going to zoom in back here, and I'm going to click on the white eyedropper and click like right here. What did that do to our image? Well, that's going to boost the contrast. So if we go to the layer and we turn it on, turn it off, turn it off, turn it on, turn it off, turn it on, you guys can see that we're we're popping the contrast, we're pushing the contrast. We could also sample this first one right here, and that would even push it a little further because I was measuring off the backlights. This is the one in the front, so that's actually kind of a better contrast. If we want to kind of keep the mistiness, we can kind of use this one back here, or maybe one of these right here. We'll use that one in the middle. That's a good one. And then we can go to the black and white background, and this is the cool thing. I click on the top here, and you can kind of go through the layers just to kind of see like what a blue filter will do. Well, I'll hit the arrow down. That's a darker. That's a green filter. That's a high contrast blue filter, high contrast red filter, infrared, lighter, maximum black, maximum white, neutral density. You just kind of see how the different filters affect the image. If I had to choose one of these, I like the green filter. Actually, it kind of changes my front light a little here, a little wonky right here, but I like what it does on the boat. But going back to darker or just default is nice. You could always mess around with the channels here, like move the channels left or right to kind of see what you can do. Kind of pulling down the reds affects the red channel, which would be the lights. Probably is going to affect the yellows too, because the lights, so now I'm just kind of locally affecting the yellows, which that's what light normally emits, is kind of a red-yellow channel. The greens would be like, there's nothing really happening in the greens with me moving the slider. The rest will probably be the blues or the cyans. So largely the blues, nope, nothing there. Let's see, magentas, nothing with the magenta. So largely all the color in the image is going to be in the red and blue channels. So this is just, that's somewhere that we could start here. But what I'm going to do is just go back to the original, and I'm going to keep the curves adjustment because I just want it a little brighter. And then I'm going to go to Nik Software, and I'm going to go to Silver Effects, and I'm going to do what Phil likes to use. He likes Silver Effects, and I'm going to go to some of my favorites are the vintage, and using antique plates. And antique plate is really fun. It's one of my favorites. And then I'm gonna kind of go through the film presets here. Just kind of look for one that I really like. I'm just looking for good contrast. I'm always a fan of Agfa, and I'm going back to Agfa. Delta looks good. And we'll do, I'm using Fuji Neopan Acros 100. It has a good balance with the highlights and the shadows and stuff like that. The other thing I'm going to do is just kind of mess with the contrast real quick. Didn't like that. Maybe the structure, kind of push the structure a little bit. Yeah, we can push the structure. Maybe the brightness. It's 20, we'll do 25. And I know you guys can't see this, just bear with me. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue. Ooh, blue's kind of nice, but I like green still. Green and then neutral. Green it is. Over yellow, over orange, green. Okay, so I like this, and I'm just going to hit OK. You guys will be able to see what I've done here. Now this is the black and white version versus the color. So this would be something that you would have to do as a creative creative thing. This can make it timeless. That's one of the things that's nice about black and white, because we don't have anything to really anchor us into what's happening nowadays. Outside of there wouldn't be running lights on the submarine like this if during war times. This is something that they just do to kind of highlight the ship while it's moored here in Muskegon. Typically, you would get lights from the pier or the docks that the ship would be moored at, the dry docks. But I really love just kind of being kind of focused in on the ship. You could easily change the crop. We're going to switch this around here. Get it from the top corner. Do it a 3:2. Cancel that. Maybe it's good as 3:2. You could almost do a square with this one too. But that's kind of the thing. I kind of pushed the texture a little bit with the structure. So if I pull this down and I kind of do the black and white. So there's the black and white that we did just with Photoshop, and this is Nik Software black and white. And you can just see kind of the difference the two make. And I'm kind of using like an old sepia tone to the film that I used, only kind of get more kind of agey feel out of it. I'm using Antique Plate 1 and Nik Software. But that's what I wanted to try to do, is eliminate the color from this. Because the color can be nice. It's a situational thing, but if the color is distracting, like these lights aren't the same color, like we got some new LEDs here, and then we've got these really nice tungsten lights. If that's distracting, you make it all black and white. Now we don't know what the color of those lights are, and it's just monochromatic all around. So that is something that you could do with that. Brian said he did black and white on the silver sides the other day, and thinking of sending in for next week. By all means, go for it, man. We'd love to see what you get. And Brian gives a thumbs up. Karen says she likes Brian's photo in black and white. Karen says the second one, so doing the Nik Software version. So again, I'm not doing any of this to really to say that you guys need to change the way that you're doing your photos. I just kind of want you to get the idea of thinking of what editing can do to your photos outside of the camera, or how to be very selective as to, does color add or take away from my photograph, and just kind of experimenting with your post-production process if you want to include that in making your imagery. The other thing you could do is change your camera to black and white and shoot in black and white and get a JPEG out of the camera. I do this with my Olympus camera a lot because they have a grainy black and white 1 and 2, and I really like using that in my photos. I know I lost a lot of you guys because we did this extracurricular editing, and I'm thankful that you guys were able to join me for this long. I hope you guys feel free to participate next week for the Best of Michigan, and I just look forward to seeing your images and being able to kind of do the same thing here next week. I know I've got a lot of submissions so far, and we're going to continue to do this to what extent because we're done doing this with My West Michigan. That's not to say that we won't do it again with WZZM 13. It just might be few and far in between. But we will continue to do the Facebook photo challenges for you guys, and trying to keep finding new and creative things to do as a group, and maybe we can incorporate that with the Camera Shop Photo Meetup group. Brian is saying thanks for doing that. No problem, Brian. I'm happy to kind of illustrate what you can do with your images. It's always fun to be creative and just trying to kind of help you guys. Again, I'm hoping I'm just helping to kind of fill the gas tank of creativity so that you can you feel inspired to go out and create new work. And one of the things I was thinking of, Brian, and everyone else who's participating, some people have done like they've done food photography, or they've done some of their other shoots. I'm thinking about doing a challenge where you do you take one of your photos that you've done that you've already submitted, and you try to see how you can up yourself, like up your game, right? Like, how can I make this better? So here's what I did before, and here's what I'm going to. Here's how I'm challenging myself to create a better image based upon the things that I've learned up to this point, and that's something I've been thinking about too. So by all means, guys, appreciate you tuning in this long, yeah, I just thank you guys, and I hope you guys have a great evening. It's beautiful. Go out and shoot. Sunset might be nice tonight, and I'll see you guys all next week for our recap of the Best of Michigan. So in the meantime, take care, have a great night, and we'll see you guys next time. Cheers.